Tonight, skyjackers up the ante in Afghanistan. Lloyd Axworthy says, give in now, get the terrorists later. Double trouble, Europe's second killer storm in 3 days. And the Lone Ranger rides into eternity.
CTV News with Lloyd Robertson. Sitting in, Tom Clark.
Good evening. For decades, it has been the ironclad rule of dealing with terrorists: never meet their demands, even if the cost is a human life. But tonight, Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister Lloyd Axworthy says that the time may have arrived to put aside those principles and strike a deal with the hijackers of the Indian airliner in Afghanistan. In what amounts to a remarkable about-face for the government, Axworthy says that in the end, the safety of the 160 hostages on board, including Canadian Shirley Macklin of Winnipeg, has to come first.
You hate to give in to terrorism because they are using intimidation tactics to gain their ends for political reasons and for monetary reasons. But ultimately, the bottom line has to be the safety and security of people.
Lloyd Axworthy also said that even if the world caves in to the hijackers' demands, they will eventually see justice. Now, CTV News attempted to speak to the minister tonight, but we were told that he was unavailable. And today, the hijackers' demands grew even more. They now want $200 million on top of the release of 35 of their comrades. Lynn Scher has more on that.
In a series of meetings with Indian negotiators today, including the first face-to-face talks, the hijackers delivered a new set of demands. Release from Indian prisons of 35 militants who've been demanding independence for Kashmir. Return of the body of Sajjad Afghani, one of their comrades. $200 million from the Indian government.
We will send our appropriate response through the negotiating team in Kandahar.
Officials of Afghanistan's ruling Taliban issued their own demand, that India do something since time is running out. But Taliban officials also warned the hijackers that they will storm the plane if any other passengers are killed. Inside the Airbus A300, passengers are said to be blindfolded, the window shades pulled down. The atmosphere has been described as rancid, but a mechanic was allowed on board to restore power to the plane, and some fresh air was let in.
Today, there has been food and water sent on board the plane, so both passengers and crew will have eaten at least today.
For the last decade, militant groups have been fighting for an independent Kashmir to drive the Indian Army out. One of the most militant leaders, Masood Azhar, has been in an Indian jail since 1994, and his release was the very first demand of the hijackers 5 days ago. Azhar's release was also demanded in 1995 by militants who kidnapped 6 Western tourists and executed 1. Jane Shelley, the wife of one of the missing tourists, negotiated unsuccessfully with Azhar.
So I think that their intent is serious, and they are willing to shed blood to accomplish their result.
However this crisis is resolved, the hijackers have at least succeeded in focusing world attention on Kashmir, once again with innocent people paying the price. Lynn Scher for CTV in New Delhi.
And there was a hijacking attempt in Germany today. A man tried to take control of a passenger flight from the Czech capital of Prague to Dusseldorf, Germany. The man gave himself up to police shortly after landing. None of the 23 people on board the Lufthansa jet was hurt. Police said that the Arabic-speaking hijacker had threatened to detonate a bomb. No device was found, and it's not clear tonight why the man tried to seize the plane. Well, closer to home, fears of terrorist attacks have triggered a security scare at New Year's celebrations in the United States. Seattle tonight is the first major city to announce that it is canceling festivities in the name of public safety. CTV's Alan Fryer has more.
The FBI says it has no hard evidence Seattle was a target for terrorists, but nor can it say for sure that it wasn't. And that was enough for the city's mayor to call off the party.
There would be those who would say that we're giving into terrorism. I'm concerned about the safety and public well-being of my citizens.
Seattle's already a city on edge. rioting at the meeting of the World Trade Organization, and then Ahmed Rassam, arrested for bringing bomb-making materials in from Vancouver. Rassam had made reservations at a hotel not far from where Seattle's Millennium celebrations were to have taken place.
No loss of a party or a big party is worth the loss of a single life. And I think we made the right decision to reduce the risk and to not create the inviting phenomenon of 50,000 people all in one place.
But other cities that are planning big New Year's bashes, like Washington and, of course, New York, are pressing ahead, welding shut manhole covers, clearing city blocks of cars, taking extraordinary measures, determined that their shows will go on.
I mean, this is New York. 1 million people, instead of, if you probably tried to cancel it, instead of 2 million people showing up, 4 million people would show up. So you have to, in essence, this is a given. You have to deal with it.
And they are dealing with it in cities like New York and Washington with massive security operations. Police and bomb dogs will be everywhere, SWAT teams at the ready. In fact, security is expected to be so tight, it may not seem like a party at all. Alan Fryer, CTV News, Washington.
Something amazing is happening in South Korea tonight as the government looks for ways to mark the new millennium. Officials are granting amnesty to 1 million prisoners, among them 2 people who were convicted as spies from the communist north. Well, the worst winter storms to batter Europe in 50 years have now claimed the lives of at least 120 people. Today, hurricane-force winds combined with torrential rains ripped right across the continent for the second time in 3 days. The destruction stretches from Spain in the west to Hungary in the east. Tonight, millions of homes are without electricity. Tom Fenton has more.
A second freak Atlantic storm in as many days has left close to 70 dead in France alone. Wind speeds reached 100 miles per hour. Thousands fled rising waters and the storm's ferocity. 3 million are without electricity, and some won't get it back until the new year. Even emergency workers charged with dealing with the storm's aftermath were not immune from its effects. This second storm was strong enough to set sail to boulders while flattening parts of the picturesque port of La Rochelle. It's more than just sad, this woman said. I asked myself, am I dreaming? It's really scary. Meanwhile, French President Jacques Chirac asked the French people to put on a brave face as they face road and rail disruptions and a damage bill that may well end up over $1 billion. Paris will have to measure the damage there not just in money, but in generations. Tens of thousands of old and rare trees lost in the city and on the grounds of the Palace of Versailles will take, says one expert, up to 200 years to replace.
Storms as violent as this rarely occur in Europe. The French Weather Bureau called it historic. And those who were here during the height of the storm, including this correspondent, say they've never seen anything like it in Paris.
And it wasn't just France that was hard hit. Dozens more have been killed in other parts of Western Europe. Some caught in avalanches brought on by snowstorms spawned by the same system. Others killed by falling trees and flying debris. Forecasters say things will be calmer for the new century's celebrations, but there's not much good cheer in that news. Tom Fenton, CBS News, Paris.
Europe is not alone in all of this. Parts of Australia are underwater tonight after days of heavy rains. There was chaos in the state of Victoria as the waters rose. Large areas had to be evacuated, and to make things even worse, a leak from a nearby reservoir added to the tide of floodwaters. And in California, hundreds of homeowners are feeling the heat from a wildfire raging in the hills overlooking Los Angeles. Water bombers in the air are helping more than 1,000 firefighters on the ground. The cause of the fire is being described tonight as suspicious. The Lone Ranger has died. Clayton Moore, the actor who portrayed the Western hero, collapsed of a heart attack today. He was 85 years old. Moore played the role for so many years on television that he took on the persona of the Lone Ranger in his personal life until he was forced by court order to stop wearing the mask in public. Dennis Michael has more on the man behind the myth.
Hi-yo, Silver!
A fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty Hi-yo Silver, the Lone Ranger.
The man behind the mask was, in reality, a former circus aerialist and model who came to acting through stunt work. Chicago-born Clayton Moore graduated from stunts to bits and finally leads in Saturday afternoon serials through the late 30s and 40s. When the radio program The Lone Ranger was transplanted to television in 1949 on the brand-new ABC network, Moore took on the role of his life.
There are men who place material gain above everything else. They'll even sacrifice their own personal safety to satisfy their desire for gold.
Clayton Moore played the Lone Ranger from 1949 to 1952. Another actor took over the role for 2 years, then Moore completed the show's run until it was canceled in 1957.
My mask doesn't mean I'm an outlaw.
Moore continued to wear a mask in public appearances until 1979. At that time, producers of a new film version of the Lone Ranger won a court order against Moore, forcing him to replace his mask with more modern sunglasses. Moore had his revenge. The movie, starring Clinton Spilsbury in the mask, was a resounding flop. At the opening of a museum honoring his fellow screen cowboy Gene Autry, Moore talked about the importance of the heroes of the Old West, both real and otherwise.
It's the good guy in the white hat, fair play and the honesty, the settling of the West. Don't forget the cowboy, the trials and tribulations that they went through. What we have today, we got from our ancestors and our pioneers.
And that is true of Clayton Moore as well, one of the pioneers of the early television frontier.
He never stays around to be thanked. He gets his thanks from helping others. He's the Lone Ranger.
Still ahead on CTV News tonight, trashing health. Is this dump a death trap?
There is a definite risk living close to a landfill site.
And later, New Year's eats. Are Canadians making dinner or making reservations? Those stories are still to come on CTV News. A deadly mixture of fire and smoke forced hundreds of people in British Columbia to flee their homes today. A fire tore through an apartment complex in the east end of Vancouver, providing a clear example of the hazards firefighters face. The firefighters suffered minor injuries from the collapsing balcony. A new health study has triggered quite a cancer scare in Montreal. Like scores of cities nationwide, Montreal allowed homes to be built near an old landfill. Researchers say that data now suggests that residents who have lived for years next door to one Quebec dump site are showing disturbingly high rates of cancer. CTV's Jed Kahane has that story.
For 30 years, the old Miron quarry has been the dumping ground for Montreal's garbage. 30 million tons of trash are buried here, including some industrial waste. Neighbors like the Basra family wonder what it's doing to their health.
The smells that bother us a lot. It's like in the summertime, you have to close the windows.
Now a new study suggests there may be a danger. It looked at historic data around the site and found an incidence of liver, pancreatic, and lymphatic cancer far above average.
The estimates were around twofold or threefold higher for these cancers than in the rest of the Montreal population.
The authors say the study is not conclusive, but environmentalists say it confirms what they've believed all along.
Finally, we have evidence that there is a definite risk living close to a landfill site.
It's enough to worry Sukhvinder Basra, whose family's been living here for 15 years.
Maybe one day you're going to find out we have something.
In recent years, the city has gone to great lengths to keep harmful pollutants like benzene from leaving the site. Gases are now collected and burned off. Wastewater is treated at a nearby plant.
Yet despite those improvements, some environmentalists still aren't convinced the problem has been entirely solved. They say the government shouldn't take any chances, and the neighbors should move out.
If we would spare one cancer for one human being, it might be worth it.
But unless they're compensated, neighbors say selling their homes and moving out isn't much of an option. Because no one really wants to move in as long as this is their neighbor. Jed Kahane, CTV News, Montreal.
It is one of the biggest toy recalls in history. Burger King is canceling the promotional giveaway of 25 million Pokemon toys blamed for a baby's death. Burger King recalled the clip-on pokeball after a 13-month-old California girl suffocated while playing with the toy. There are no reports of similar incidents in Canada, but a company spokesperson advised all parents to keep the toys out of the hands of children under the age of 3. And briefly in other news tonight, the Red Cross says that 50,000 people are feared dead from flooding in Venezuela. An official called it one of Latin America's worst catastrophes. So many villages were destroyed, in fact, that an accurate death count may never be known. In Indonesia, at least 55 people were killed in gun battles between Christians and Muslims on the island of Ambon. Mobs set fire to this church. The island has been racked by violence for months. And performers staged a colorful rehearsal of New Year's Eve festivities on Parliament Hill today. And to count down the hours, the country's timekeeper, the National Research Council, unveiled its Millennium Clock to mark the passing of the century. Still ahead in tonight's news, last rites for 1999. Canadians divided on how to celebrate the new millennium.
I'd probably be asleep by midnight. I'm flying that night.
And later, meals and memories on wheels, a CTV success story for all the ages. That's coming up on CTV News. A brush with winter today resulted in a chain of pileups stretching along Ontario's busiest highway. The worst was in the east of the province, near Gananoque. Icy roads and near whiteout conditions on the 401 caused this chain reaction accident. It involved about 40 vehicles. 10 people suffered minor injuries. The accident forced the brief closure of the very busy highway. Well, with only 3 days to go until the year 2000, here's a question for you. What are you doing on New Year's Eve? Well, if your answer is nothing at all or very little, you are certainly far from alone. That's clear according to a CTV Globe and Mail Angus Reid poll released today. Of Canadians surveyed, only 50% have made any plans to celebrate New Year's Eve. Even fewer, just 23%, are planning to do something extra special. And a mere 10% say they will attend large public celebrations. And why have so many Canadians become immune to the millennium hype? Is it a case of Y2K fears or Y2K fatigue? CTV's Holly Doan has that story.
There's lots of brie, but it's not the one.
Yeah. The supper of the century. Most Canadians will eat their last meal of the millennium at home.
Stay home, make dinner for two, and relax and probably be asleep by midnight.
We were invited out, and we wanted to be at home traditionally, with our family.
The Cross Canada poll predicts this New Year's Eve will be quiet.
How quiet? By Christmas, half of all Canadians asked said they still had not decided what they'll do on New Year's Eve. Of those who had decided, 1/3 said they'll mark the millennium at home. No parties, no plans.
Is it because Canadians are afraid of a Y2K computer failure? No, but they're curious.
Who knows what'll happen at midnight? Will the power go out? I better be home to make sure my pipes don't freeze.
People are cautious. They're concerned what's going to be the next day. So I think some people are actually staying home because of that.
About 1 in 10 Canadians will have dinner in a restaurant New Year's Eve or have food delivered.
They're cocooning in a way. I have people just up the street that we're catering dinner for that are kind of afraid to go out.
Few Canadians are traveling Friday night, though Peter de Jager can't understand why.
I'm flying that night.
De Jager is the computer expert who first warned the world about Y2K. He's going to London and back again.
I'm trying to convince people that when I say I believe that things will be okay, that we have fixed the major problems, that I truly believe it.
Across the country, Canadians say this will be a New Year's Eve like any other. Maybe. Holly Doan, CTV News, Toronto.
When we return, cooking up a millennium project that nourishes young and old alike. Well, finally tonight, a CTV success story that provides a feast of ideas for the new millennium. It involves a group of young Canadians who deliver food to the elderly through the well-known Meals on Wheels program. But in this case, it's a helping hand with a difference. These young Samaritans are not just giving, they're also receiving. CTV's Scott Laurie explains.
As part of a Meals on Wheels program, Adrian Burhop doesn't just give, he collects.
Hi, Mr. Barista.
Memories of hundreds of elderly clients. 82-year-old Ella Arusso gives a glimpse into her history.
To bridge the gap between the generation I live in and the generation the clients come from.
Young and elderly are coming together.
It was very hard to get a job for engineers, and we came here. Here was fantastic. It was 51, long time ago.
It's a pretty low budget.
As a college graduate looking for work, Burhop's dream is theater. Millennium Funding pays his salary. The Meals program lends his theater group a meeting area.
Keeps my attention.
It's usually a place where students pound,
Mashed potatoes,
chop, and pour their way into the lives of people who need
a well-balanced, nutritious meal, and have activities and social programming so that they, if they're not able to remain active members of society, at least they're engaged.
The young cooks also gain.
It's good to have contact with, you know, just sort of an elderly figure, a grandparent type.
People like Shauna Newton rely on their clients
Oh, thank you very much.
for family, school, or work advice. Clients like 91-year-old Alma Schuff oblige.
I've seen quite a bit of the world, actually.
They also give a sense of belonging, providing computer courses, health tips, or field trips.
We old people, we like to go to a meeting where you hear a young people tell us or give us a lecture. That's what we like to know. Yeah, good.
As they learn, they teach about persisting with dreams.
Learning ground on one level for new skills in intergenerational activities, and also a place to go after my theater passion.
Bye, everybody. Bye. Be thinking of you. Bye-bye.
Learning from the dreams and deeds of others. Scott Laurie, CTV News, Montreal.
And that has been our look at December 28th, 1999. Lloyd Robertson returns here tomorrow night to see you through the new year. So let me wish you a happy Y2K and hope that we never have to use that dreadful expression ever again. Good night.
CTV News, Canada's most watched newscast. For news the moment it happens, weather, business, sports, the net covers your town, your country, your world. CTV News Net. News now.